Hi, I'm Rachel, and this is my Would You Read It Challenge video for July 2026. If you're watching this around the time that it is posting, I should be on vacation far from here, but I didn't want to leave you high and dry during the week that I'm basically not by this backdrop. Besides, the Would You Read It Challenge is something I try to keep up with month by month. So it is a challenge that was started by Et2 Brody. The purpose was to choose a variety of books by whatever metric you'd like, read the first sentence of each book, and then ask your audience if they'd continue with each book. I decided one sentence wasn't long enough, so I've elongated it to a page, a few paragraphs, something like that. And I am using as my metric the BookTube Prize fiction divisions. So the BookTube Prize was started by Robert Sheard in 2019 as a way for the literary bookdernet to come together and judge the best of literary fiction and nonfiction published in English in the US the year before. That means this current year in 2026, we are reading 2025 releases, and we are at the tail end of the third of four rounds in the semifinals. But I'm not talking about, the books we're currently reading. I've gone back to ballads of the past, and I'm going to the, complete long list called the Octofinals, because every year we start the BookTube Prize with each division having a list of 48 books, and that's what we whittle down through the rounds until we get to our winners and runners-up. So I've been going through these lists sequentially, well, particularly in the fiction division. And that means that this month I am up to BookTube Prize year number 2023, and we are in ballot F. So there are 6 books on this ballot, 3 of which I have read, 2 of which I've read because they were part of the finals that year, and then 1 of which I've read on my own, out of my own interest, and then 3 other books are relatively new to me, except now I get to have a little bit more familiarity with them as I read the first few paragraphs or so with you. So without further ado, I'm going to go ahead and read these paragraphs, share the books, give my thoughts, and invite your own. I feel like I've been talking really quickly, but maybe reading will slow me down. Anyway, we are starting with book number 1. It had snowed lightly in the night, and her frozen hair was gold and crystalline, and her eyes were frozen cold and hard as stones. One of her yellow boots had fallen off and stood in the snow beneath her. The shape of her coat lay dusted in the snow where she dropped it, and she wore only a white dress as she hung around the bare gray poles of the winter trees with her head bowed and her hands turned slightly outwards, like those of certain ecumenical statuses, whose attitude asks that their history be considered, that the deep foundation of the world be considered where it had its being in the sorrow of her creatures. The hunter knelt and stalked his rifle upright in the snow beside him, and he took off his gloves and let them fall and folded his hands one upon the other. He thought that he should pray, but he'd no prayer for such a thing. He bowed his head. "Tower of ivory," he said, "house of gold." He knelt there for a long time. When he opened his eyes, he saw a small shape half buried in the snow, and he leaned and dusted away the snow and picked up a gold chain that held a steel key, a white gold ring. He slipped them into the pocket of his hunting coat. He'd heard the wind in the night, the wind's work, a trash can cluttering over the bricks behind his house, the snow blowing out there in the forest in the dark. He looked up in those cold enameled eyes glinting blue in the weak winter light. She had tied her dress with a red sash so that she'd be found, some bit of color in the scrupulous desolation, on this Christmas Day, this cold and barely spoken Christmas Day. And that was from The Passenger by Cormac McCarthy. Book 2, 1. Early on a Sunday after First Mass in Clonagall, my father, instead of taking me home, drives deep into Wexford toward the coast where my mother's people came from. It is a hot day, bright with patches of shade and greenish sudden light along the road. We pass through the village of Shalala, where my father lost our red shotgun in a game of 45, and on past the mart in Carnew, where the man who won the heifers sold her shortly afterwards. My father throws his hat on the passenger seat, winds down the window, and smokes. I shake the plaits out of my hair and lie flat on the back seat, looking up through the rear window. In places there's a bare blue sky. In places, the blue is chalked over with clouds, but mostly it is a heady mixture of sky and trees scratched over by ESB wires, across which, every now and then, small brownish flocks of vanishing birds race. I wonder what it will be like in this place belonging to the Kinsellas. I see a tall woman standing over me, making me drink milk still hot from the cow. I see another, less likely version of her in an apron, pouring pancake batter onto a frying pan, asking if I would like another, the way my mother sometimes does when she is in a good humor. The man will be no taller than her. He will take me to town on the tractor and buy me red lemonade and crisps, or he'll make me clean out sheds and pick stones and pull ragweed and docks out of the fields. I see him taking what I hope will be a 50-pence piece from his pocket, but it turns out to be a handkerchief. I wonder if they live in an old farmhouse or a new bungalow, whether they will have an outhouse or an indoor bathroom with a toilet and running water. I picture myself lying in the dark bedroom with other girls, saying things we won't repeat when morning comes. And that was from Foster by Claire Keegan. Book 3, 1822. The people who live there call it the farm, though it's half trees, woodland merging into dense forest. A 2-story, 2-room log cabin has been brought from a nearby acreage on rollers greased with pig lard. The walls are whitewashed, the shutters painted red. A kitchen is added on one side, a bedroom and loft on the other. These additions stand off the main room like wings. There is nothing special about this cabin with its low ceilings, meager windows, and canted staircase, and moving it was a costly business, every local ox and man hired for the job. They all left the neighbors with the impression that the new owner was a bit crazy, a thought they never had cause to revise. The relocation puts the cabin beside Beach Spring, where the water is so clean and clear as to be invisible. But, and the neighbors suspect this is its real purpose, it's also a secret cabin now, screened from the wind and the road by a dense stand of walnut, oak, tulip, and beech. Still, since everyone in the neighborhood helped move it, everyone in the neighborhood knows it's there. The nearest neighbors are the Woolsleys on one side and the Rogerses on the other. Bel Air, the county seat, is 3 miles away. The big city of Baltimore, some 30 miles of rough coach road to the south and west. And that was from Booth by Karen Joy Fowler. Book 4. The swimming pool is filled with dog shit, and Dee's laughter mocks us at dawn. I'd been telling her all week that she's looking like the crackhead she is, laughing at the same joke like it's going to change. Dee didn't even seem to mind that her boyfriend left her, didn't even seem to care when he showed up poolside after making his rounds to every dumpster in the neighborhood last Tuesday, finding feces wrapped up in plastic bags. We heard the splashes at 3 a.m., followed by his shouts about Dee's unfaithful ass. But mostly we heard Dee's cackles, reminding us how hard it is to sleep when you can't distinguish your own footsteps from your neighbor's. None of us have ever set foot on the pool for as long as I've been here, maybe because Vernon, the landlord, has never once cleaned it, but mostly because nobody ever taught none of us how to delight in the water, how to swim without gasping for breath, how to love our own hair when it is matted and chlorine-soaked. The idea of drowning doesn't bother me, though, since we're made of water anyway. It's kind of like your body overflowing with itself. I think I'd rather go that way than in some haze on the floor of a crusty apartment, my heart out-pumping itself and then stopping. This morning is different. The way Dee's laugh swirls upward into a high-pitched sort of scream before it wanders into her bellow. When I open the door, she's standing there by the railing, like always. Except today, she faces toward the apartment door and the pool keeps her backlit, so I can't see her face, can only see the way her cheekbones bob like apples in her hollow skin. I close the door before she sees me. And that was from Night Crawling by Layla Motley. Book 5, 1926, Holloway. Is it a hanging? An eager newspaper delivery boy asks no one in particular. He was short, just 13 years old, and was jumping up and down in an effort to obtain a better view of whatever it was that had created the vaudeville atmosphere. It wasn't much past dawn, and there was hardly any light in the sky, but that had failed to deter a party crowd of motley provenance from gathering outside the gates of the Holloway prison. Half of the throng were up early, the other half seemed not to have been to bed yet. Many of the congregation were in evening dress, the men in dinner jackets or white tie and tails, the women shivering in flimsy backward silk beneath their furs. The boy could smell the tired miasma of alcohol, perfume, and tobacco that drifted around them. Toffs, he thought. He was surprised that they were happily rubbing shoulders with lamplighters and milkmen and early shift workers, not to mention the usual riffraff and rubberneckers who were always attracted by the idea of a show, even if they had no idea what it might be. The boy did not count himself amongst the latter number. He was merely a curious bystander to the follies of the world. Is it a hanging? He persisted, tugging at the sleeve of the nearest toff, a big flushed man with an acrid cigar plugged in his mouth and an open bottle of champagne in his hand. The boy supposed that the man must have begun the evening in pristine condition, but now the stiff white front of his waistcoat was stained with little white dots and splashes of food, and the shiny patent of his shoes had a smattering of vomit. A red carnation, wilted by the night's excesses, drooped from his buttonhole. Not at all, the toff said, swaying affably. It is a cause for festivities. Old Ma Coker is being released. And that was from Shrines of Gaiety by Kate Atkinson. And finally, book number 6. 2015. They follow the guide, a thin, pale girl. She's wearing a linen sheath dress in moss green, and there's a fine, spiky tattoo wound around her right arm that looks like barbed wire. Kushla moves to the edge of the crowd, away from the French and Italian tourists in expensive rain gear, her own age, which still surprises her. Away from the man on her left, pushing 50, with steel gray hair that's greased back, small glasses, and a soft wool jacket. The guide stands slightly to the side of the next exhibit, a couple of feet from Kushla. This close, she can see the barbed pattern on the girl's skin. It's coarse, spiky tendrils of stems and golden flowers. Kushla likes her for it, for choosing the shrub that chokes the hills here, not roses or butterflies or stars. It is a piece of sculpture made of resin, fabric, glass fiber, a white figure on a plinth chalky sarcophagus, a shrouded look about the face, features indistinct. The body is oddly sexless, though it is male. There is a breadth in the torso, bulk at the chest. From the waist up, he looks peaceful, sleeping, head resting near the bend of an arm. There is something not right about the pose, though. His limbs are splayed awkwardly, having not been arranged. The girl begins to speak. This work is from the 70s, she says. The artist was moved to make it when her friend was murdered. While the almost classical composition is a familiar representation of death, the disordered configuration is shocking, hinting at the violence of the moment of the subject's murder and the chaos of the hours that followed. She gives us her friend as everyman, yet his rather untidy bearing makes him human. And that was from Trespasses by Louise Kennedy. Okay, I think I'm just going to go in order. Usually I start with the books I've already read, but this time I'm just going to go from book 1 to 6. So book 1 was The Passengers by Cormac McCarthy. And actually, as I was typing this out, I was more annoyed with it than I am now, although I still think it's my least favorite of the bunch. But it seems to be of a hunter on Christmas Day who finds a woman's frozen body in the woods. So it's an arresting image, but I don't know, some of the language annoys me. I think I've read some McCarthy before. Not his full novels, but this, grouping of two words into one word seems familiar, so I wonder if I think I've read him and been annoyed by this before. And in general, it doesn't intrigue me that much. The idea of, this poor hunter coming across a girl who's dead. I mean, I don't know. And it's also this sort of prologue. So, I mean, this was, and then chapter 1 begins immediately after this, but I decided not to go for it. Then book 2 was Foster by Claire Keegan, which I read and for the finals that year, although it didn't medal. And I liked it. I think I had some problems where I kind of felt a little underwhelmed by it. It's a story of a young girl in Ireland who goes to foster with this couple, the Kinsellas, because her family is overwhelmed and her mother is pregnant. And so this is a bunch of setup. And, part of me is sitting here thinking, I don't just want to be in the car with her ruminating. I want a scene with her and someone else. But at the same time, I love the scene setting too. Like if I just slow down and listen to it, the ESB wires crossing over and all that sort of stuff, it is really beautiful. Like maybe I should take a moment. And it's interesting to think, I think this was a short story that was elongated into like a small novella. Although maybe that's some of the reason why we're like staying in this headspace, and she's ruminating on the Kinsellas, but she hasn't met them yet, so we don't know what they're like yet. But it's an interesting little novel. Book 3 I also read, Booth by Karen Joy Fowler. I just read it for myself. Booth refers to John Wilkes Booth, the famous assassin of Abraham Lincoln. He assassinated him at the Ford Theater in part because John Wilkes Booth and his family were thespians. And that comes into play in this novel, which follows his family members, his siblings, more than it actually follows him. At the very end, we kind of get into him more significantly when the assassination happens. But I did appreciate this novel. I just thought it was a really interesting look at what life was like. I mean, I guess I have the bias that, they grew up in Maryland, which is my home state. And I think it also asked some challenging questions because actually, John Wilkes Booth, he became enamored with the families of slavers and the Know Nothing Party to the right. But his family was considered more liberal in its way. But, there's some ways where, people think of themselves as liberal, but there's some more culpability in their actions, I think. But so there's, that interesting component that I don't think overwhelmed the story in preachiness as I remember it. And mostly I think I really like getting to know these characters. And there was interesting commentary, too, on celebrity because they were all famous thespians. Book 4 is Nightcrawling by Layla Motley, which I've not read yet, but I'm really intrigued by this. I am reminded that, in this tag, I'm drawn to like compelling characters more often than not. And here we have this woman who's so dramatic that her ex-boyfriend is dropping dog shit into the pool. And this is the scene, the dramatic scene that we're invited into, which part of me is reeling back and saying maybe it's a little too dramatic, but at the same time, it holds one's attention. Perhaps. So maybe I'd like to know more about Dee and her neighbors and what's going on here. Then book 5 I also haven't read yet, Shrines of Gaiety by Kate Atkinson. Although I think I read the longest segment from this one. I think it intrigued me about this idea of the young newspaper boy at a hanging, and he's like explaining these throngs of society and the sort of vaudeville atmosphere. So it really sets the scene really well. Admittedly, I'm not very familiar with this historical context, so I don't have much to say other than my own ignorance, but I guess I would be intrigued to see what exactly is going on here and why it's exciting that this person is being released. But even in and of itself, I just like the boy's take on society and also the way that he distances himself from it. Maybe that's a little bit less, self-aware of him. Of course, he's also part of the show. And then finally, book 6 is Trespasses by Louise Kennedy, which medaled in the finals. It took 3rd place. And I think in my reading of the finals, it also was like a little middling to me as well. I mean, I liked it, maybe didn't love it. It's a story that takes place again in Ireland, and 2015 is a big part of it, as it says here. It touches upon the Troubles. Cushla is our main character. She's a teacher. She works in her brother's bar. She's a Catholic. And she gets involved with this married Protestant man. So it's trouble all around for this particular environment. And I think some of that sexual relationship kind of rubbed me the wrong way, but there was a lot of interesting commentary that, although it did mostly make me think I should just read more nonfiction about the Troubles. And this is an interesting opening. I don't feel like it has anything direct to do with what the story will ultimately be about, but sort of an art lesson on why a murder victim makes for an interesting canvas and what, the sculpture is saying about what happened. So, I don't quite remember this scene, frankly, but it's good. It's all right. Those are my thoughts, and I would love to hear yours, especially if you've read these books, or if you haven't, and like me, maybe you're coming across some of these first paragraphs for the first time. If I were to pick of the 3 books I haven't read, maybe I guess I'd go for Shrines of Gaiety. I think I would like to continue on with that historical fiction, but frankly, I'm almost positive I won't because I have so much to read as it is already. So there we have it. And yes, that about covers it for me now. I will leave the Goodreads links for all of these books in case you're interested, and my reviews of the 3 books that I have already read. And also my playlist if you'd like to, go through other tags of this nature that I've done in the past. In the meantime, the actual Book 2 prize semifinals are grinding to an end or maybe racing to an end. So I'm really glad that I'm actually not judging the semifinals, because at this time I should be on vacation and hopefully have more time to enjoy myself and not worry too much about deadlines. So I think I made the right choice, I gotta say, but I am very much looking forward to the finals, which will start next month. Also, speaking of vacations, expect me next on this channel with my cruise and reading video. Hopefully I'll have some fun footage to share. But if some of you are reading for the BookTube Prize this year, I can't wait to hear your thoughts as well about your latest reading. And in the meantime, thanks so much for watching, everyone. I'll see you next time.